we are going to read what reflexes are, what is a reflex arc, what are the components of reflex arc. So the definition of reflexes are that they are your responses. They are your stereotyped responses to sensory input, which might be mediated by the reflex arc. Now, what is a reflex arc? Reflex arc is the pathway for a reflex activity. And we have to remember that every reflex arc has got 5 components. What are those? The receptor, which is going to receive the impulse or receive the stimulus. An afferent nerve, who is going to carry the information from the receptor to the center. Then maybe one or more synapses while going to the central station, or maybe you can say when it goes to the center. Now, this center can be locally, it can be at the spinal cord level, or it can be at the brainstem level, or it can be at the higher center where it goes to the cortex. Then comes the efferent nerve, who is going to get back the information from the center towards the effector. So efferent nerve is carrying those informations from the center to the effector organ. And finally, we are going to reach to the effector. And this effector, if it is muscle, we call it as somatic motor system, and it may be the glands where your autonomic nervous system may come into a picture. Then there is something called as reflex latency. It is also a property of the reflexes, what we call as the delay and or the latency. So what is this reflex latency? It is the time period from the point of stimulation to the point of response. Okay. Since this reflex latency is dependent on to what type of afferent nerve and efferent nerve is involved, whether they are myelinated nerves or they are unmyelinated nerves, plus they are also going to be dependent on to the number of synapses. If it is a monosynaptic circuit, obviously you'll have a synaptic delay of 1 synapse. If it is bisynaptic, you may have a synaptic delay of 2 synapses, like that. So this reflex latency is going to be dependent on 2 factors. One is the conduction velocity and the other is the number of synapses. As I told you, the reflex arc has got how many components? It has got 5 components. What are those? 1, the receptor. 2, the afferent nerve. 3, the center. 4 is my efferent nerve. And 5th is my effector organ. Clear? So here is an example of a stretch reflex. Stretch reflex is your monosynaptic reflex. So we have studied in detail about the stretch reflex. We knew what is the receptor for that? The muscle spindles. Muscle spindles are the receptors for the stretch reflex. So here is an example of knee jerk. When you give a percussion hammer or reflex hammer, when you tap that patellar tendon, what is it is going to do? It is going to stretch the muscle. Stretching of the muscle is going to stimulate the stretch receptors, who are the muscle spindles, and via 1A fibers, the impulses are going to go to the center, and that center is your spinal cord. They go and synapse directly onto the alpha motor neuron, and this alpha motor neuron is going to cause the contraction of the extensor. So contraction of the extensor is going to cause the extension of your limb. So this is an example of simple stretch reflex.